if we can dwell
No,
on
sir.
the if we
Yeah.
can well dwell on the context. Hey, am I audible?
Yeah, you are. Okay, we are start. Manu, please start with the. Okay, Manu, are you ready?
Yeah,
Please start.
The request was to set the context. So that would also help us, to become prepared for the session. Thank you.
We'll do it after session maybe. Manu, please start. Uh, delay.
yeah, sure. So, hello, fellow enthusiasts of entrepreneurship. A very warm welcome to each of you all here at Jamshedji Tata Society for Innovation and Entrepreneurship in collaboration with Nilgiri House. We are delighted to have this session on measurement and monitoring, operating and financial metrics, a process towards building clarity of thoughts. It's a follow-up session to the Eco Profit Workshop series with Kriti Soni, and we are conducting this workshop series under our beloved event, Becoming Billionaire, Monetizing Your Ideas. We are privileged to have with us as our esteemed speaker, Dr. Soumik Bhusan sir, with a PhD from IIM Ranchi, a CA of batch 2007. Sir is currently the CFO and director at Coco Blue Retail. Without further ado, I invite Dr. Bhushan sir to share his invaluable insights with us. Before that, after this session, we will be having our Q&A part as well. So stay tuned till end. Participants can ask questions. They can post the questions in Q&A part, Q&A section, or alternatively, they can raise their hands and ask sir directly at the end of the session. So respected Bhushan sir, the stage is all yours from now. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you everyone. Thank you the organizing committee for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this forum. And good morning, all of you. I am Shomik. I enjoy taking sessions and sharing my experiences. So today I will be taking a session on building a link of measurement and monitoring, operating and financial metrics. And as we get deeper into this, I hope I'll be able to explain you what I mean when I say a link, and what I mean when I say how to build a clarity of thought. Again, as I said that the number of participants who all are there, if I just sum the overall years of experiences versus what I have, I think you guys will always have a cumulative number of experiences much more than me. So don't think that I know it all. I am here also to learn from you. It's a disclaimer that don't think that but I'll try to answer most of your questions, and if not, I'll surely get back to you with the answer. That much I can promise, and I will share my credentials. So if any one of you want to reach out to me for anything, I would be very happy to help. So with that, let me get started. And as I say that I might not be able to see the chat window. Or any one of you if you've raised the hands, but I would request the moderator, if you think that there is any question or you want me to pause, I can do that, and in between I'll also take a pause so that I can also kind of toggle and basically take some questions if it's there, right? Okay, so as the topic says, there are some few keywords. There are the keywords are measurement, monitoring, operating, financial, then there is metric, then there is clarity and thought, right? So we'll start with measurement and monitoring. So what do I mean by measurement and monitoring? So in any business, whether you are running your startup or even in your day-to-day work, measurement and monitoring plays a key role how you want to drive your business, or even if you're not business, even if you are in academics or even you're a student, it's important that how do you measure and how do you monitor. So when I say measure, right, measuring is nothing but determining the actual characteristic of something. So what do I mean by that is, say if you are measuring say sales, right, you should be able to understand how to how a sale should be measured, right? It essentially means that sale should be something which the customers have paid if you have sold a product. So that should ideally be that the sale. Of course, it can happen that the collection might come later on, but what the customers are willing to pay for your product or have already paid for the product is what you mean by the actual characteristic of sale, right? So that's how you measure say sales, right? Then when I say monitoring, monitoring means that once you are measured, right, how closely you are able to record and detect, in the sense that once you have done the measurement, do you have a process to record that particular transaction, and whether you are able to detect if there is a gap to what you have hypothesized or what you have expected, and if there's a gap to what you're actually seeing, right? Now, why it becomes important? Because they're saying, uh, you know in any of the business languages, that it says that what you measure is what you get, right? It also says that you get what you inspect, and not what you expect. So you need to have this measuring and monitoring tools, so that you're able to inspect, right, which will enable you to uh, you know basically kind of keep on improving on what you're doing. And there's also a third thing, which says that you can't manage what you can't measure, and if you can't measure, you can't improve on it, right? So this is the essence of why we are doing this session, that in any entrepreneurial stints, right, you need to have a very clear process defined, or you should have a very clear data generating process defined, and that's how all your technology should be able to give that. Okay, if you are recording, if you need to measure something which is important for your business, you need to have that process to measure it. And also you should have the second layer, which is that there should be a second process which should be able to monitor that process, so that you're able to find the outcome which you expected, whether it is meeting what you expected or what you desired, right? Now we will come to this basic question, that why suddenly you think that I'm talking about monitoring and measuring, or measuring and monitoring becoming so important, right? Of course it was always important, um, but what we measure and what we monitor have changed over the last maybe 20, 30 years, right? And why suddenly it has changed, right? It has changed because expectations from us have changed. When I say us, many I am looking, many of you as entrepreneurs, or many of you as managers, many of you will work, or even if you are in some other field, there's always the expectations which are bestowed upon you, which have changed. And the question is that why that has changed. So there are two reasons why things have changed, right? The one uh, fact is that stakeholders, right? Our stakeholders have changed, right? So when I say stakeholder, can anyone, like, I'm also opening a forum for also getting some views. Can anyone tell me what do I mean by stakeholders? Any quick people can chat now. I'm seeing the chat window, so you can also type in, or you can unmute and say. Anyone, what do you mean by
Uh,
stakeholders?
ba- Basically, sir, different types of owners, sir. Owners of the business, sir. Different types of
Okay,
owners.
okay, or partners, interested parties, right? I can see some names. Yeah, Sukamal, Anand, yeah, right. You're absolutely right. So there are different type of interested parties, not only owners. And so when I say stakeholder, this is what I mean, right? In today's world, there is a management, there are owners, there are customers, there are community, there are suppliers, there are employees. All of these have become stakeholders, right? In earlier days, when you were maybe in possibly 1960s or 70s or even 80s, right? Initial, stakeholders are always shareholders, right? Which are typically the owners. But now, if you see that has changed. Now there are so many, people whom you actually have to make happy, because a business is not only seen from one lens. There are multiple lenses. There are multiple people, right? Even regulators are also kind of watching you, right? So basically what I wanted to say is that why that monitoring and measurement has become important is because each stakeholder is likely to view the organization performance differently. Say for instance, if it is government, they would not only see whether you have made kind of profits or not. It also depends whether you have given it back to society, right? And hence I'm sure you all know that there is something like a corporate social responsibility, which is becoming so important. Even there are ESG norms which are getting so important, right? So every stakeholder, right, needs, should be a basic threshold of satisfaction on certain parameters which a business has to deliver. And hence organizations must measure and monitor the performance and identify the metrics, right, which is important to each stakeholder. Say for instance, if employees is also a stakeholder, employees, maybe sales or profit might not be important. It could be something else, right? How well the corporate HR policies are, which are helping the employee to stay within the organization, or whether they are being remunerated enough so that they're able to deliver, right? So managers might influence what measures to be used. They might say, okay, maybe uh, for employees, I'll not track employee satisfaction. Rather, I'll just track, the salaries paid, and I'll try to benchmark whether it is as per the industry standards. But this, whether that is a good enough measure or not, that will only be decided by the stakeholders, because they would obviously understand that what is the threshold of that satisfaction, whether that parameter is actually capturing or not, right? And hence, right, uh, even though you might think that you have done great as an organization, the concerns of each stakeholder should be addressed, and not at the expense of others. That is the critical thought which I want to leave with this slide, that it is not good enough just to measure only some of the metrics which are important for maybe only for the shareholders or for the customers or for the employee. It has to be a holistic view in which you have to monitor each of the metrics, right? So with that, I am moving on. Then I am again coming to the second aspect of measuring, right? Why suddenly measuring becomes so complex, right? It becomes complex because of the data generating kind of a process, uh, and please bear in mind, right? What we want to measure is not only outputs but also inputs. And what do I mean by that, right? Let me explain this in the in the coming slide. What do I mean by inputs and what do I mean by output? So again, I'll again toggle. I'm now looking at the window. So any thoughts? Anyone want to share? What do you mean by inputs and outputs? Anyone? Any thoughts? Okay, let me.
Basically,
Yeah,
uh,
Profit and
ba- ba- ba-
expenditure.
yeah,
yeah,
Manoj, you can go
basically,
first.
basically, sir, in the context of manufacturing organization, the raw material constitute the inputs and the finished product constitute make the outputs, sir, in the manufacturing setup, sir.
Okay,
In the service sector, what we- basically, sir, what services we are providing and what cost we are taking from the what price we are taking from the customer, that can be sort of input output relationship, sir. But in more
got it,
context, sir,
got it. Anyone else? I could hear someone. Yeah, please unmute and speak.
Profit and expenditure.
Okay.
Um, Actually, we can also think about what changes we did as part of the organization. That can be the input, and how did the stakeholder respond? That can be the output.
Okay, great. So let me, try to, bring a much simpler context, right? So say in our childhood days, right, in all our parents, and by the way, today is Mother's Day, so we should all be happy about both our parents as well as mother, is that, like everyone wanted us to be maybe a good student, right? Now, uh, now in order to become a good student, right, which is a much higher order variable, right? It is like, okay, who has defined what is good, right? How good look like? But we know that in order to be a good student, one of the measure to become a good or not is maybe how well did I score in some of my exams or in my classes. So, and that is called as output, right, which is can be easily measured by the marks which I have scored. But the marks which I have scored is not dependent, is dependent on multiple things. Say, for instance, the number of hours I have put into my studies, right? That becomes an input. So in this example which I have given, input is the number of hours which I have studied. Output is the marks which I have scored, and there is something which is a much higher order element which is called outcome, right? Outcome is that I want to be a good student, right? So in the similar lines, right? If you now look into any organization, every organization has a clear process, which essentially means that there are inputs, there are outputs, and there are some outcomes, right? Now when I say that I want to uh, typically kind of measure my inputs, I'm just giving you the context. Say in today's e-commerce space, or even in or in an online kind of digital business model, typically what are the different stages in which what is the experience which customers have when you are trying to buy your product or buy a service from any of the digital platforms. So we search for that particular product, then we click on that product, again we search, again we click, then we see whether what is the date on which we are getting the delivery, then we compare, Once we compare, once we have identified the product, then we add to the cart, then at times we abandon the cart, we don't even go ahead and place the order. Then possibly if we have not abandoned, we'll possibly play, not play, so we should pay and then get the order confirmation. And automatically based on that, there will be someone in the warehouse who will pick that particular order, they will pack that order, they will label the order. Then there is a transportation team will ship the order. There are now the entire shipment has to be connected from the warehouse to the middle mile and to the last mile where there is a delivery station, right, where the product will be assigned to a delivery associate, and then you will actually receive the goods, right? So these are the very 30,000 feet broad work streams which are in play for one single order or one single product which you have searched for any digital e-commerce model, right? Now you just imagine that what inputs did we are supposed to measure, right? Again, as I said, that in this transaction the output is the sale which has happened, right, or the order which is placed, right? But there are multiple inputs in play in this entire scheme of things. And I have just given the example of some of the inputs. Is that what are the new unique items, or we use the word a selection which has been added in that week or in that month or in that year, which essentially means that we believe that if a customer is searching for a particular product, they should be able to see multiple more and more options from which they can choose. So that is a clear input, because we believe that, say for example, you are searching for a white maybe a Peter England shirt, right? And when you search for white shirt Peter England, you found XYZ and multiple brands, right? But you didn't find Peter England, say, then possibly you will not stay in that particular website, you will or app, you will move to a second one where you get that, right? Eventually you might end up buying a brand Z, but the fact that you didn't get the brand which you wanted will make that platform to lose that customer. So that one of the input could be that what are the different selection which has been added. The second thing is that I'm sure that if there are two different platforms and you have the choice to buy the same product from these two platforms, and say the prices are also same, the product is exactly the same, the only differential which will make you to buy from a platform A versus platform B will possibly the speed at which you're getting the delivery, because everywhere you will be paying upfront by maybe a card, and then you want that, okay, which platform is giving you the faster delivery. So hence the inventory deployment, meaning the ability to keep the inventory closest to the customer demand, is an input metric. It so shows that how well I have been able to replicate my inventory close to the customer zones. Then the other input metric could be out of stock, right? How many times a particular product is going out of stock? Because if it is going out of stock, there's a high chances that I am also losing, some of the customers. Then the other could be that it is just not adding only the unique items, but you should keep on adding more and more vendors so that they are able to offer more options to the customers. Then there is pricing. Then there is this fast track promise, by which I mean that how many times when the customer has searched for a product and they got that, okay, you ordered by say 8 a.m. today, you get the delivery by say 3 p.m., right? How many times that has happened? Then there could be reach, that whether how many times the customer has search for a product and they have got an output saying that it is deliverable, right? It is nothing but whether all the pin codes or postcodes which are there in the country are kind of reachable or not. Then you can also measure the number of customers who are basically kind of getting added every day. Say someone is not registered in a particular platform, but I have now kind of registered, so that's that also is one of the metric, that number of downloads done or number of new registrations complete. And then of course there are the number of times someone has clicked by searching, and so on and so forth. And then you have the supply chain metrics, like a capacity to fulfill, number of warehouses, delivery stations, number of transporters, right? So this is what I possibly mean, that you need to measure inputs at the lowest level of granularity. And there is a reason for that. The reason is that inputs are controllable, right? Again, if I go back to my our example of being a good student, the number of hours you put is controllable in your hands, right? So in today's world, what has changed? If you recall, the slide which I mentioned with what I started, that what has changed is this measurement of inputs, right? Because outputs finally will end up into a very standard thing, which is sales, my cost, my profit, and so on. But the inputs which you can possibly try or track, is immense, because and hence it needs that you should understand the data generating process or the operating model, right? Because like as I said that, and this example which I was saying, that if the out of stock is there, and the lower the number of times inventory is out of stock, there are more chances that the customers will buy, right? And customers buying is more of a result of all your inputs, and hence measuring inputs plays a key role. So here I'll take a clear 1 minute or a 30-second pause, and I would open up the forum for asking any question. Did this land on you? I mean, I hope you're able to understand this. Any thoughts? Anything? Okay. Yeah, Navneet, you want to say?
There are few questions posted in the Q&A section.
Okay,
Uh,
if you can read them.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So a question by Subrat Tiwari.
uh,
What does middle mile, last mile mean?
Okay, so middle mile is nothing but, say, when you have a warehouse, right? Now, say you have a warehouse, say, in Calcutta, right? And you have got multiple deliveries which has to happen, say, in Andaman, right? And you see that, okay, there are only few orders which are for Andaman, but you have many orders which are in, say, for Chennai, right? So instead of shipping directly to Andaman, you might, bring everything together to a sortation station where you aggregate the orders and then ship from there, right? So that is the middle mile network, where you set up a lot of sortation centers where, to optimize your, speed and the transportation, you aggregate the products. And last mile is nothing but, when you have finally reached the, to a delivery station which is closest to the pin code of the customer. From there, when the products are getting assigned to a biker or a three-wheeler who actually comes to your home to deliver, that is the last mile. Okay.
Another question from Anand. How to identify leading indicators for monitoring measurement rather than
Yeah,
lagging indicators?
yeah, I have a slide on that. I'll come. I'll come. Just wait for 2 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, Santosh, you can ask a question. Go on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think this is very interesting. Typically, we measure only the outcome. In
Or
a kind
output.
of a output rather.
Yeah.
But this is interesting that let's go to the input which are more controllable.
Right.
That can definitely have it. So one quick question is, let's say typical outcomes are revenue, margin, cost.
Yeah.
So do you think that the inputs we should measure what is stopping us, from activities that are leading to revenue? Why are, cost indicators not taking? Are we in the same direction? So just wanted to have a
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have picked up the right thing. So that's exactly my point of view. The point of view is that why you think it is getting so critical to measure the inputs is because ceteris paribus, given everything constant, we believe there is a hypothesis that if you get your inputs under control, your outputs will occur. Say for instance, like if I know that 99.9% of the times a company will be in a situation where there is no out of stock, right? Automatically, the sale will happen because in no time I am out of stock, right? And I know that the product generally gets sold, right? On the same way, just think about an airline, right? I forgot the name of the airline, but there's a big airline to which a new CEO had come, and they just said that one of the things which will first only try to measure is the number of times the flights are leaving on time, right? And they believe that if it is on time, then we believe that the number of passengers will automatically increase, right? And hence, measuring input becomes so critical. And I have a slide in the following how I'll show you how or what to typically measure as inputs, given there is some output, right? I have a slide, and leading and lagging also I will answer in the next slide. Yeah. Any other question? Anything else, Srijal?
Yes, there's one more. Um, yes, sir. Will there be any hidden metrics that even the company does not know? Those that have an effect but only come up if we dig deeper. By Devavar.
Absolutely. You are bang on, right? And hence there is also a process which we typically called as a 5 why, right? So whenever there is a problem, right, you should typically have a process or a mechanism so that you can go to the, last root cause, right? This is more like cause, as a root cause analysis. Say for instance, I can take an example, right? Say for instance, I suddenly see that my cost of shipping has suddenly increased, right? So then you ask the question why the cost of shipping has increased. Then the answer would be the cost of shipping has increased because the transportation cost has increased. Then the question is that why the transportation cost has increased. The transportation cost has increased because the fuel price has increased. Now, why the fuel price has increased? The fuel price has increased, because as per the economy, there is inflation, or there's a lot of imports which country has to do to increase the fuel cost increase. Now, the question will be that why the fuel cost increase, we are not able to pass it on, basically to the end customer, right? That's where the last question ends. That means that there is a impact, or there is an action which has to be needed on your pricing policy, in the sense that whenever there are this sudden increase which happens, right, which is also making the shipping of your product costlier, what policy you will follow to pass on that increase to your customer? Because finally, if it is always known that this type of prices are going to increase, so do you have a policy around it, right? And that's exactly what is how, if you're now, just imagine you have a now policy in place, then you exactly know that whenever this type of event occurs, you will be able to use that policy and pass it on to the customers, right? So that your P&L is kind of neutral, right? I am giving a just one example, but like this, there are, you can actually think of many more. And that's exactly how, the moment you understand this input, then output and outcome, and then around it, if you're able to do a good dive deep and understand the root cause, you will be able to run your business better, right? Clear? Okay. So I move on to the next slide. Now, the question is, what outputs do we measure, right? Now, of course, as I mentioned, that outputs is final. It's a testimony how well you managed your, inputs. So the outputs could all, of course, be this number of orders, number of quantities sold. There's a type which should be sold. The cost of goods sold, the shipping cost, gross margin, right? Operating costs, operating profits, debt, equity, and multiple. There are several ratios which you can derive or arrive using the profit and loss and the balance sheet, right? I hope these outputs are very broadly clear, right? Now with that, but the only point what is important is that we should first focus on inputs, and once inputs are final, then only we should focus on the outputs, right? Now the question is that why do we measure the inputs, right? And I think one of the participants have asked this very pertinent question, that why it is so critical, right? And the answer to is exactly what I think someone has told, because inputs are a leading indicator, and leading indicator is nothing but it helps you in a predictive measurement, right? So example of this is that, just imagine in earlier days, maybe number of accidents which has happened in a on the road was always metric which possibly all the police department have measured, or even any construction sites it was measured. But in today's world, what they also measure, is the percentage of people wearing the hard hats, right? Because they believe that if the percentage of people wearing the hard hats are high, then the number of accidents which could be fatal will come down, and that is what getting measured in kind of today's world, right? And we have progressed much beyond just measuring a lagging indicator, because the safety indicator, which is the number of accidents, it's a lagged indicator and not a leading indicator, right? And on the on the similar lines, right? um, Say for instance, satisfied and motivated employees, right, is a leading indicator to customer satisfaction, right? I'm just kind of calling out some of them. One I already mentioned, number of times the product was out of stock, is a leading indicator to the number of orders placed, or the chances that the customer has bought, right? And of course there are other processes, but the whole idea is that uh, when we say, typically when we say we need to measure inputs, the reason we measure, because we believe first, inputs are something which are controllable. Second is that inputs are leading indicator, right, which, because it is in our control, we can influence the change. And once we influence the change, the output, which is a lagged indicator, can tell us that how well we have managed that change, right? Before coming to monitoring, I'll again take a pause because there was a last bullet which said that can anyone give me uh, one example or two example of what can be a leading and a lagged indicator? Yeah, the house is open for others.
Sir, can I?
Anyone? Yeah, sure.
So, sir, like I would like to give an example of a retail store.
Yeah.
Like if a shop owner is like friendly with you, and like if you are asking him from for something and he's like giving it to you at the moment instead of delaying it and saying it that I will give it to you, I will be more frequently visiting the shop for my monthly confectionery stuff. But if he does not do that, I will go to another shop. So like that can be like an example of a leading indicator. Can that be?
Absolutely. I mean, anything can always be indicator, but the question is that how do you measure? How do you measure whether
For example,
that shopkeeper has been cordial or not? How do you measure it? Because there has to be, some way to measure it, right?
sometimes having if that is a local shop in a small area, then we can even think about how well the person knows you personally. Even
Yes,
that,
possibly yes, right. But maybe a very clear way how big companies do or how possibly retailers do is that you will see that any large store, if you go, there will be a dedicated person who will be like a greeter, right? Uh, and their just job is that once you're entering the store, they will greet, they will possibly give you a catalog, and they will possibly enable you or hand over that that customer to a salesperson who is then going to take you around the store. That the job of that greeter is not to take you around to the store, but rather just to welcome you in this, right? Now the measurement of that is that how many out of the number of employees you have on the store, and I'm talking about a fairly large retail store, how many greeters are there, right? And there are and you will always see that there are certain tools in place, and there is something called a clicker. I mean, when that greeter has actually welcomed any kind of a customer, you can possibly say that number of customers which that person kind of greeted, right? So you will always see that when you enter a store, there will be a security who will also have a clicker, right? That security actually measures the number of footfalls. But then once the person interacts with the greeter, then the greeter will also have a clicker, right? Which will possibly say that okay, out of 100 people entering the store, how many of them were greeted, actually greeted, right? So that could be a process how you are trying to measure it, or it can always be a process that you design your stores in such a way that there is a security. Then automatically you have to cross that greeting channel, which essentially means that all the 100 people who are entering the store, everyone is greeted, right? So then you don't then you know that okay, then 100% greeting. The only thing to measure that number of days when the greeter was not present in the store, that is a defect metric which you can always monitor. And if you see that that percentage is zero, then you are always good, then you have actually controlled your input, right? I hope I am able to explain that, right? Okay, right. So with that, I move into monitoring. So once the measurement is kind of clear, what do you do, right? We need to build a plan for the metric, right? And once I build a plan, meaning as I said that I define that okay, my input metric is that number of times or number of days the greeter is absent, so that's the metric, right? And it should be zero. And imagine that there is one day because of some exigency, one of the greeter was not there, right? Which essentially means that one day that person was not there, right? So we just need to monitor plan versus actual, and then do a dive deep to understand that okay, why it has gone wrong, and then we have to possibly find out a mechanism through which to see that okay, if this has happened, is there a way we can avoid, right? So hence, if you recall that one of the anecdote which I mentioned that you can't. Is there something I could hear? Please be on mute unless you have a question. Okay. So then what I was trying to say that if you recall, there was a statement which was made that you can't manage what you can't measure, and you can't improve unless you know how to measure, right? Hence the point is that you can only improve a process when you know how to monitor, and if you know how to monitor, you first need to measure. So monitoring and measurement goes hand in hand, right? Now I'll give an example of measuring an output metric, right? And say many of you possibly know that there is a metric called as return on equity, which is nothing but profit after tax divided by the equity. Equity is nothing but the money which has been infused by the promoter or the shareholders, right? Now I'm just giving a framework, right? And it is a very simplistic framework which essentially says that I can break this in a particular ratio, and which is my profit after tax by equity, right? Just by doing a class 5 fundamental maths, where I just break it into three components, where I say that PAT by sales into sales by asset into asset by equity, with nothing but, if you look into each of the components, you will see that sales and sales knocks off, and similarly assets and asset knocks off. So in the end, you are still seeing PAT by equity, right? uh, Again, I'll take a pause because I'm not sure how much this is. I hope it is clear, right? I'm just taking a ratio A by B and then just writing A by C into C by B, like that, right? It is clear. Okay, great. uh, and then what I'm trying to do is that I am then still further breaking it up, and I say that PAT, which is profit after tax, is nothing but profit before interest and tax, minus interest, right? And I'm just for the time being assuming tax is zero, right? And then I'm again breaking this profit before interest and tax as my gross margin minus my operating cost minus interest. So I'm just breaking this up, right? And then what happens, you will see that I am able to break this entire return on equity into possibly five components, which can be easily assigned to certain group of people within an organization who are entrusted to deliver the final return on equity, right? So what I'll do is that I'll just go to the next slide, and I'll just zoom in into this gross margin by sales, right? And this is what I mentioned, that how you typically break down the output into number of inputs, right? Now you say in this equation, right, there is gross margin and sales, right? And I am going deeper into sales. And right, I'm just breaking sales into a very simple maths. I'm saying sales is nothing but the outcome of number of orders into average value per order. The number of orders I can break down into number of customers into number of orders per customer, and average value per order can stay constant. Then I'm,
Sir,
yes,
sorry to interrupt you. I don't know what is here like average value per order.
yeah, I'll tell you that. I'll explain you that. Good. Thanks for asking. So when I say average value per order, is say you went say again, same example. You have gone to a retail store, and you have gone to buy a grocery, right? You all the grocery products, right? So you bought say detergent, you bought some vegetables, you bought some fruits, right? And you end up paying say 550 rupees, right? So and that is one order. So so the number of orders is the one order, and the average value per order is 550. Now imagine there are 100 or 99 more customers who have again gone into the retail store in that day, and everyone had bought something, right? Someone had bought uh, uh, goods worth say 900, someone 2000, someone 3000. At the end of the day, imagine that the store recorded a sale of say 1 lakh, right? Now that can be easily broken down into number of orders, and if I just divide the total sales by the number of orders, I can get what is the average value which the customer has bought, right? So that is the what you call as average value per order. Is it clear, Sanjoli?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, great. uh, and then, right, when I say number of orders, this number of orders can be broken down into number of customers and number of orders per customer. So imagine in the first example when I say that you had gone to the store once, right? Imagine you have also gone to the store in the second time. So the customer is still you, right? But you have bought two times, right? So that is how you can break the number of orders into number of customers and number of orders per customer, right? And then this average value per order can be broken down into number of units per order and average price per unit, in the sense that, as I said, that you bought say detergent, you bought vegetables, you bought fruits, right? So there are, and imagine you ordered some number of units, right? So you can even break this average value per order into the number of units which someone is buying and the average price per unit, right? And then imagine this number of customers, right, can also be broken down into number of clicks, or in the sense that in a physical store it could be number of visits into the conversion. It essentially means that not always you will enter a store and buy, you will enter and might not end up buying something. So I can always monitor something, that out of all the walk-ins which are happening, what is the percentage conversion which is happening, right? And that is again an input, right, which essentially means that if I am able to build a retail, whether it is offline or online, that number of people who are visiting and actually ending up buying at least a one product, which essentially means that I'm able to have my conversion rates at the highest order. And that's exactly how you are able to break down sales, which is an output metric, into something which is more controllable, right? You possibly know that, okay, that if I'm able to have my right level of inventory or the right products which the customers generally come into a store, then I can have a much higher conversion, right? In the same way, if you are able to create a good shopping experience, you can know that, okay, there will be a large number of people who will be visiting the store, and so on and so forth, right? Again, I'll take a proper 30-50 seconds break, and I'll take questions. Yeah. Yes, Santosh.
Yeah, thank you. So we are talking about decomposing an output,
Right.
into the input. But
Right.
how do we overcome the challenge of limitation of capability of measurement?
Yeah, so it's a very pertinent question, and there is no single answer to it, but there is still a thought. The thought is that when you are building a business, you need to have a capability, whether you build that capability using a manual process or automated process, so that you have a data generating capability, right? If you recall, when I said that, say there's a large retail store, and you know that traffic is very critical to me, at least so that I know that how many people are at least visiting the store. Then the way to measure is that whenever you can do it in two way. One is that at the gate you can of course put a basically scanners, so that whenever some warm body is entering that, that okay, this is one count, the second one second count, so you know that what traffic is happening. This is a advanced way of measuring that traffic. Or the other way is that that there's a security guard anyway I have to keep, because it is important. Just give him or her the clicker, and they kind of keep on clicking, and whenever someone is entering, and in the end of the day, you should have one person who should take the register and then update that for the day how many people have kind of visited, and then possibly ingest that into a system, right? So the short answer to your question is that you need to define that, okay, this is important for me to measure, and how do you want to measure, and possibly it could be a combination of a physical and automated process. Is it clear, Santosh? Any thoughts? Anyone else?
I have a lot to give. See, this is very interesting from a bottoms up approach. But let's say you're working in an organization. This looks like a tops down approach,
Uh-huh.
and bringing this to some granularity has to work with the customers that we manage. But anyway, I do get your point. This is interesting from an entrepreneurial standpoint and from a data engineering standpoint. But my problem statement is elsewhere. When we work with a large set of customers and the data is sitting with the customer, how do we get this to happen?
Now, just give an example. When you say data sitting with the customer, what do you mean by that? Give an
All
example.
right.
Yeah.
One of my customers is Google, and
Okay.
we do high-end engineering, VLSI work.
Okay.
Now, what I measure for them is, from an operational standpoint, what is the revenue that I'm getting, and this is basically a staff hog. engagement, right? My apologies to others, sir. This might be a little bit higher level, but the question that I'm trying to understand from this is, if I really want to improve my margin, which is the most, let's say earning per share. Okay, let's come to the that particular metric, and if I want to decompose it to the input level, should I not have access to the data that is sitting with the customer, which might not be able to be readily available with us? I mean,
No,
we can take it
uh,
outside if it's not is out of the context here.
I don't know. I mean, still, it's okay. Like, I'll not, because it needs some debate and discussion. So but still try to answer. The answer is that it is your customer, right? Customer, just imagine a little bit at again a 30,000 feet level, right? You should know that how to know something which is important for you to run the business from the customer, right? If it essentially means that you need to know that, okay, I need to know that, what is the, customers' buying behavior, and you will see that in many companies, right, they will, send out a survey, right? And based on the survey, there will be 100 questions. Maybe the efficacy of the survey could be that out of 100, only 5 will answer, but still, there's a chance that you can get to know some trend or some underlying which you want to know, which is important for a business to run. And hence you will see that whenever a new product is getting launched, or if someone wants to do it more scientifically, there are marketing surveys which is done, and those are taken as an input how you design your product or a service, right? So I maybe we can catch up offline on this, Santosh, but I personally feel that it is not that you need to know everything from the customer. You need to know what is important to know of the customer, which helps you to drive your business. And there are ways how you can get those information. May not be at 100%, but to an extent it is possible, right? And but yes, how to get it will differ from business to business, but yes, there are certain ways how you can get it. I leave it there, but I can, we can have a different discussion there. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
yeah, yeah. Anyone else?
Um, yeah, one small question.
Yeah,
So, in case we have a business that has primarily fixed cost, so and let's say, for example, a gym or a school, the
hmm,
revenue that we get will depend on the number of students, but
correct.
the gross margin will change per student itself because the costs are fixed, right? Every student that I get, that is more revenue, and then the gross margin will change per head. So, in that case scenario, how do you measure?
Yeah, again the same thing, right? So what you're trying to say is that you have got five different sets of customer, right? Say for instance, I'm assuming that you run a primary school from say nursery to five, class five, and so there are possibly six different standards, and each of the standard has a different fee. So the way to measure is that you can again, break this down into the mix of the customer, right? You can always say, okay, I expect, the number of customers to be highest at maybe at the nursery level, or the students to be highest in nursery level, and then you devise mechanism so that you know that what best you can do so that the conversion rate of people or students staying in your own school is so high that possibly you are at a 90% efficiency, that 90% of the students who are at the nursery moves to the next class, and kind of so on and so forth, right? So basically what you have to measure is nothing but the conversion or the transition of the students from one class to another. And then automatically, because the rates of what you are charging from each of the student categories are different, because each level needs a different level of expertise, then you then the next part of the gross margin becomes much easier, because it is more like a mathematical, how do you build up a the cost of offering, right? Cost of offering, meaning say you are charging say 10,000 from me. That can always be done in broadly two ways, right? One is that what is the market rates are for a similar setup. That is one, that is of course one way. And the second way is of course that what is your bottom up cost, and you can add a markup. And you know that for each of the student types there is a certain cost which are fixed, and on the top of it you want to earn a margin. And that margin can vary based on how much you think you want to get closure or want to be at a premium to the market, right? And kind of that's how you typically build it.
So again, in this scenario,
Yeah.
let's just take, for example, one class. Now, one
Yeah.
class can hypothetically fit, let's say, 10 students.
Okay.
As of now, there are 0 students. So, when I'm calculating gross margin for the first student, it would be
Mhm.
very hard because I'm allocating all of the cost for example, rent, fees, etc., to one student, and the gross margin for that would become negative. But when I add the second or the third or the fifth student, the gross
Mhm.
margin per student keeps changing, correct? So, is there
Mhm.
any way to stabilize that?
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. There, yeah, absolutely. There's a way, and hence, and I think you have touched upon a very nice topic. This is called as what you call as relevant costing, or management accounting theory, right? What it essentially says that when you're pricing any product, right, you should be pricing the product to the extent of the variable cost, in the sense that it is always good to run a business or do a service where you are able to recover bare minimum your variable cost, right? Because once you're able to recover your variable cost, the recoverability of the fixed cost is only dependent on your volumes, right? So in pricing theories, one of the basic ways how you price is also to at least have the price set so that at least it can able to recover your variable cost, right? Because when you are seeing gross margin, the theory of gross margin is never your fixed cost. It is always your selling price minus your variable cost. That's what is gross margin all about, and then you try to allocate your fixed cost.
Okay.
Got it?
Is there
Yeah,
any way that we can stabilize the gross margin in case the costs are primarily fixed cost? Like not even school, let's say it's gym. So even in that example, the primary cost would be the fixed cost. For example, the cost of machines.
correct, correct.
So because
Yes,
we usually like in costing, we would like apportion the cost as overheads to each of the units.
right. I'll give you a formula. So the formula is very straightforward. Say your selling price is 100, right? And your variable cost is say 30. So you will leave, you will have 70 rupees as your margin, gross
Contribution.
margin, right?
Yeah.
So if you divide your fixed cost, say you had invested 5 lakh in your equipments, if you divide 5 lakh divided by 70, whatever number you get, that is the minimum number of subscribers of the gym which you should get to be at break even, profit. When I say break even, zero profit or loss, right? So that's the formula of it. So that's the way how you stabilize. So once you have your, when you're building up a business plan and when you have all the numbers in a spreadsheet, you can possibly see that what is the target, customers which you need to have to operate your profit at a break even.
I understand. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other question? Yeah, Santosh. Yeah.
So I think what has to be very clear is the GM and the OM has to be very clear. I think the previous question, uh, the clarity was not there in the GM and OM. That's why we have the capex and OPEX coming in, right? If I may be wrong, but what I understand is OEM operating margins take care of the capex, which means what you call it. I have to account for the entire costing to the org, whereas GM is talking about how do I get the variable portion out of it. But I may be wrong. But that I thought that clarity might help the previous question.
Yeah, and that's what I also mentioned, that when you say gross margin is nothing but your sales minus, yeah, your cost of goods sold, which are variable in nature. And how do you define variability? Is that are you going to incur that cost if you have to make a sale, right? So in essence, right? Imagine you're running the same gym, a gym outfit, right? You know that your value proposition is that when a person is there in the gym, you need to have one dedicated instructor. So you essentially know that if there is a subscriber to the gym, there is one to one mapping, right? Which essentially means that in order to earn a revenue, you need also to pay a cost to the gym instructor, right? So that is one to one mapping, and hence you know that if you have to do sale, this cost will also go up. So that's how you identify a cost which is variable or not. But however, whether you need to pay the rent or not is totally independent of whether you have actually got subscribers. So that is your fixed cost, right? So typically in any financial model, or even in the profit and loss, the way you build up a profit and loss statement is that first you need to adjust your variable cost, then you get something called the gross profit. From then you keep on adjusting your fixed cost, and hence in today's world they always say that lower operating leverage will always help you to be more agile as a business. When I say operating leverage, essentially means that the more you have, the less you have fixed cost, better it is for the business in today's kind of scenario, because it essentially means that you can always negotiate your fixed costs and so on and so forth, right? But yeah, I think that is a little different topic, but good that you are bringing up the question. I would have loved to take a session even on those aspects as well. But yeah, but I hope the thought is clear. What we wanted to say, right? We can move on. Is there any other question? Okay. Right. So I'll moving on. I'm just assuming you have all understood this part, right? Now, so till now, what we have covered that measurement and monitoring are two different process. We have also understood that it is important to measure inputs and not only outputs. We have also understood that if you have to measure inputs, you need to know the data generating process or the operating model. That's the key. And you need to measure and monitor all the parameters which are critical for all stakeholders and not only shareholders. And both measurement and monitoring actually goes hand in hand. It's not that you only measure but not monitor, or monitor and not measure. So both have to be done, right? With that, we now go to something called as a clarity of thought, right? I hope if you recall, the theme of the topic was measuring, monitoring, operating and financial metric. And I hope you are clear that when I say operating metric, these were mostly leading indicators like your number of times the product is going out of stock, or number of new customers added, and whereas the financial metrics were the last one which we are trying to cover, meaning your return on equity, sales margins, and so on and so forth. Now I'll give you a quick exercise, right? And I'll be watching this. I want you to count the number of bubbles which are there in the slide, and many and people, you guys all can be hands on deck. I want most of you to type in onto the chat window. Okay, 3, 2, 1, and here it is. Okay, I've got three different types of answers. So I'm now okay. Okay, stop. Okay, this is done. So I've got three different answers, but that's fine. That exactly was the purpose of this slide. And you can see that it has taken some time, right? Now I'm going to, give you the answer is 21. Okay. Now, please count the slide immediately. The number of bubbles. Now, quickly. Okay. And I'm sure that you all could understand that you are able to get the answers much faster, right? I possibly, the last one took to give the right answer. Most of you, some of you got it right, some of you got it wrong. But just see that this one you were able to do in flash. So what is different between this slide and the previous slide? Anyone who wants to open up can
Sir,
tell me,
the bubbles were arranged in a specific manner. So you were
right? Yes, it was
able
more
to
organized.
identify it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyone else?
It was grouped in a pack
It
of
was
four.
grouped. Yeah,
It was
it was grouped, right?
well
So this,
structured and grouped. Yeah.
yeah. So the answer is still the same, right? But it's the same thing which I just grouped it, right? So now we enter into this domain of clarity and thought. What do you mean by clarity? Clarity is, by the definition, is clear understanding, and thought is what's there in the mind. And why that is important is because in today's world, I'm sure most of you will be in a situation where you have to take decisions. It's important to have a clarity of thought because you need to understand what are the right inputs for you to take the decision. And if you have a very good clarity of thought, and possibly you'll be able to prioritize the management time, because you need a decision from, say, a CEO or a CFO, or even your manager. If you have a clarity of thought, you can always prioritize management time, and it will lead to improved decision making, and it will keep on making you to learn in a very deliberate way, because you know that you have to practice this quite effectively, because you also know that if you're able to get a decision in 5 minutes instead of writing three documents or having five meetings, it's always better to do it in a way that where both of your time are minimized, right? And of course, many of these will come to you is like a organized common sense, and the fact that in today's world you need to execute better, because you will always be dealing with ambiguity, which means that you will not have all the inputs which are needed to do a perfect kind of a decision, or you will not have the perfect information, right? And if everything was perfect, then possibly all of a job could have been done by robots, and which we know which is not the case, right? uh, Now there is when I say clarity of thoughts, I also mentioned about mind, right? uh, of course it is not very sure that what is going on in other person's mind, right? While we know that what is in our mind, so if you're possibly talking to your manager or your peers, you possibly don't know what is there in others mind. But yes, there is a way how you can understand what is going on in the other person's mind, and how possibly someone can react, and I'll get deeper into this. And this is something called as, there's a theory called as theory of gestalt law. Again, I'm uh, kind of calling out, I'm not a psychologist, but I have read this, so I thought it is useful in today's world, and hence I'm sharing it. What this law says that and that our mind operates in a way that we are able to build patterns and identify clusters, right? And if you recall, why the second time when you counted the bubbles, it was easy because of the fact that there was some structure, some organization, and so on, right? And uh, Gestalt laws of grouping says that humans naturally perceive objects as organized patterns, right? And some way you will find some pattern across the objects, right? And this is a completely natural phenomenon, and I'm sure that in some conversations you will come out with a very happy note, because you found out that it was exactly the way how it happened. Maybe it fitted in a certain structure, right? Okay, someone said A, then there was B, there was C, and in some conversation you will see that it is all over the place, right? Maybe because you are not able to understand the pattern in which the conversation happened, right? So Gestalt law says that our mind has an innate disposition to perceive pattern in the stimulus based on certain rules, right? And those patterns are linked with five components which are called as proximity, similarity, continuity, connectedness, and closure, right? And I will go into each of these. And what it and how it helps is that once these factors are in play, our mind will be able to group, they will be able to order, they will assemble, and then they will be able to comprehend. And I'm sure that this looks to be like highly with jargon and very complex, but I'll explain you with example, but also with the theory. So first we'll go into the theory, right? First theory is proximity, right? So proximity means, again, just recall your that bubble example. Proximity means that how the objects are kind of close to each other, right? And that is called as proximity, right? It means that um, there are certain ways that when you are saying some things in a certain format, or one to another, you'll always feel that there is a certain position in which the thoughts are coming, and some objects will be kind of close to each other. So that is one example of proximity. So our mind always evaluates something which is proximate, meaning it is close to one another. The next is similar, right? You will again see that the moment you have certain things which are similar, right, you will always try to group in one place, right? So some example, if you're seeing some orange color and some green color, you will possibly able to understand what is orange and what is green, and you will try to group them. The next is continuous, right? It is, if you are seeing something together, right, it will be easy for you, the mind, to comprehend, rather than something another. Just imagine that in the first slide, when I showed you the bubbles, there were two bubbles which are in extreme corners, and hence it was not continuous, right? And hence some of you got 19 and not 21, right? And hence you are unable to bring things together. The next one is connectedness. So connectedness means that once you have seen certain objects together, our mind will always find a way how to connect the disjointed objects, right? And say, for instance, right, that there are some stargazers, and you will see that they are able to find the constellations because they are able to some way able to connect, right? And that is connected. And then something called the closure, because we know that our mind is able to read, and you will see that in some cases even there is a spelling mistake, you will be able to read it, right? You will be able to fill in the blanks, right? This means that our mind, our brain has the capability to see even the bigger picture when something is missing, right? Okay, I'll now take a pause because this is going to be a little intense. So are you all clear on these five things? Meaning, I'll give an example for sure, but at least I mean, were you able to relate to the bubble example, most of you? Yes, Santosh, you have a question? Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm not able to connect this with the entire scope of measurement. So maybe I'm missing the link, but that will come later.
No, no, Santosh, good that you're asking this, because if you recall, right, the the purpose of this session is that one is measurement and monitoring, right? That we have completed, right? Now, what I'm trying to explain is that uh, in whichever field you are in, it is important to get a clarity of thought, right? And how do you design the clarity of thought? Because unless you have a clarity of thought, you can't even know what to measure and what to monitor, and that's the linkage, right? And I'm trying to help you guys with a process how you can bring clarity of thought, and that process will come next. But when I say there is a clarity of thought, what I mean to say is that there is a theory which is called as Gestalt law, which says that our mind has a you know has a power which are able to see things together, right? And that power comes from these five principles, which are um, if the objects are proximity of the objects, similarity of the objects, continuity in the objects, right? And the connectedness of the object, and closure of the objects, right? And each of these has got five different meanings. And what I was trying to relate, because again, as I said, as a disclaimer, that I'm not a psychologist, but I have read it, so hence I'm sharing with you that if you recall the example of the bubble, there were 19 bubbles in the first one which were together, and there were two in two corners, right? And hence some of you have got 19, some of you got 20, some of you got 21, because you're not able to connect, because these were not kind of close to each other, which essentially means our mind was not able to react. However, in the second case, when I grouped them and organized, you're able to understand the proximity, you're able to understand the connectedness, and you're able to even uh, you know get it into a closure, because there was only one bubble which was alone, but still you are able to fill in the blanks. You did 5 into 4, which is 20, and then 1, right? And hence all of you got the answer correct as 21, right? Now, okay, is there any other question, Santosh? I hope I was able to explain you.
But yeah,
Yeah.
is it fair to assume that this is more of upstream, and before we even to select the right metrics,
Yes,
this would be the good way to go about it, right?
absolutely.
And then that brings a connective. I remember bumping into this because this forms the entire, I would say, the premises on which the entire data science actually works. How do
Yes,
we understand data, connect them, and bring some understanding? Okay, thank you.
right. Any other question? Anything which has come in the chat window? Moderators, is there anything which are there? Okay, I do not
No,
see
sir.
anything. Okay, so I'll move on. A quick thumbs up from some of you who are attending. This will help me to understand if you're with me so far. Okay, great. Okay, so now I'm moving on, right? So what did we do so far? We said, what is going in others' mind is not easy, but we know what is there in others' mind. But what is going in others' mind, there's some way, right? And we know that if I say something to someone, then there's a way someone will react or respond. And the way to know how a person is going to uh, react is defined by that I have to give you a stimuli. Okay, and please, I would request all of you to pay attention, right? And because this is critical, because this is little more, as I said, it is as also Santosh said, this is much higher order than measuring and monitoring. This comes to you how you can possibly define your the way you run the business, or define the way how you want your life to be, right? So it is little on the higher order. and it is important that all of us are getting aligned to this thought, right? So now what we will do is that I'll give you a stimuli, right? And the stimuli is this, and tell me, are you able to read it?
Yes.
Correct. So this is the example of what I was saying, that your mind will able to read it because things are together. Things might not be because there's a closeness. So there's a fifth principle of Gestalt law which is in play, right? Because things are together, it's already grouped, you're able to still read it. Just read it, right? I'm sure all of you were able to read it, right? Because it's just one alphabet which got so, right? You don't need to be a genius, right? To read it, because your everyone's mind has that innate power to understand and to group things, right? It can able to find proximity and connectedness, and they will be able to read it, right? Okay, now I'm giving you a stimuli. Okay, read this headline, and again, can anyone tell me what this headline, what it comes to your mind when you read this headline? Yes, yeah, go ahead.
Essentially, the fourth quarter has very strong performance from Lemon Tree, that's the hotel chain.
Okay, anyone else? What comes to your mind first, right, when you read it? Yes, I mean, the first point was also fine. Anything else?
Yeah.
Basically, sir, the room rates are on the higher side, so we can expect the quarter four to be very strong because room rates are high, sir. So the revenues will be there because the room rates are on the higher side. So we can expect that the quarter four will be will give you a maximum revenues, sir.
So, I mean, all of you are giving answers to the next level, but once you read it, didn't your mind ask, or first thing which came to your mind, isn't it that why it happened, right? How many of you, got this, once you read it, you wanted to know more, that why? I mean, kind of, did that come up to some of you, or all of you, or many of you? Did that why question come when you read the first line?
Yes, yes, sir.
Ye- Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Right now, so whenever I'm giving you a stimuli, you will possibly ask why, by how much, what, and so on, right? So what had happened is that multiple, there could multiple reasons, and many of you gave the reasons, and some of you told me what is expected. But the first thing, possibly, I'm assuming that what came to your mind is why, right? Why did it happen, right? Always remember that this is a stimuli which is given, right? And then the mind always reacts that why did it happen, and you need to keep on answering that why. Okay, now I'll as I said, this is once the stimulus is given, there's a possibly a host of why. So once this headline is there, with elevated room rates, Q4 to be another strong quarter for hotel sector, says MK. MK is a research firm, and adds Lemon Tree, IHCL, and this other group is Sharet, right? Once you read this, the possible first why which is coming is that why did it happen, right? So why this Q4 will be better? The answer to that is that the hotel sector expected to remain strong in Q4 according to recent research, right, which is done by the brokerage firm. The next one will be why kind of this will be good enough, because this is because the average room rates have gone up and it has improved year after year, right? Then the next thing is that why the average room rates have gone up, or why the it is improved year on year, because the demand has gone up, right? Then the next answer will be the why the demands have gone up, right? Because we are seeing there are multiple exhibitions or multiple events which are expected to happen, because of which the demand has gone up, right? And then you end up into this, that whether the demand is going to continue or not, and whether every chain is going to benefit, right? It is saying that strong demand is a is also happening because of the signing of the management contracts by these two three companies which were kind of mentioned, right? So what I'm trying to leave the thought with you is that this first part, right, which I showed you, right? This is a, you know, headline of a news article, right? And let me share that with you because then you will understand why we did this. Um, and just let me know if you are able to see this article or not. Are you able to see this article,
Yes.
right? So if you see this, this is a news article from Mint, right? And this is exactly what I copied, right? And the way news articles are written is basically it gives you a stimuli, right? And possibly you'll always feel whether a news article is written well or not if the news article answers your whys in a right order, right? The moment you read this news article, possibly you will understand that why that growth has come, what is driving that growth, is it going to occur for the long term, and exactly if you read this news article, you will see the way I showed you exactly how the answer was written, right? Because I picked that up just as example. So you will see the moment you are reading this, automatically the write up is trying to answer all your questions, right? So what I'm going to again kind of let me do a uh, basically one more example, and then we will possibly take some questions. Tell me one thing, right? If I say the share price of say Titan Industries have tanked by say 10%, right? I am giving you a stimulus. What will be your first why, or basically what will you first think?
Why did it fall?
Okay, why did it fall? Then, okay, then if I say that it fell because the sales were down, then what will be the next question?
Why did sales fall down?
Okay, the why the sales fell down. So I said that sales fell down because the gold prices went up. What will be the next question?
Is it expected to continue?
Okay, or maybe the why the sales fell down, then I'll say that maybe or sorry, why the gold price has gone up because maybe the demand of gold has gone up, or maybe there are, then you will possibly keep on asking that question, right? So if you are reading any of the article where you are getting this headline, right, that okay, say some X company's share price has tanked, or say some X company's share price have gone up, that headline is acting as a stimuli to you to ask some few questions, right? And that are possibly you are going one by one and you are trying to answer those whys, right? Is this making sense? So let's spend maybe 30 seconds on this. Are you getting this clear that our mind can have the ability to understand things in a certain order, and the way you can invoke your mind is by giving a stimuli, right? And to give a stimuli, one way is that just give a headline, and then automatically you know what the mind would ask and keep on answering them. Is that philosophy working? Anyone can maybe unmute and say that if you have all got what I'm trying to explain. Yeah. Yes, Santosh.
Yeah, maybe I can help, in our the business connects, right? Typically, we
Yeah.
start off by giving the performance, right? Your gross margin dipped by 2%,
Hmm.
or the sales has gone by 14%. Because what I've seen personally, when you give those headliners,
Hmm.
the stakeholders on the call get into that kind of why phase. And that is the intent to arrive at, that final why, which can be
Yeah.
action. I hope that helps you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly what I wanted to state. The fact that there's a certain way how you can possibly understand that. Uh, just one second. I'm just sharing the screen. I hope this slide is back, right? So that you need to give a stimuli, and then possibly because you now know that how the mind is going to behave. Now get your answer scripts ready so that you exactly, if I say this, these are the possible questions, then that's exactly how I should be able to prepare my narrative, because that's how you can have a very good conversation, and that's what is also going to demonstrate, that you guys have a clarity of thought. So this is, one example, and you can maybe after this session you can just read today's newspaper and just read any one article on the first page or any page of the newspaper and just read the heading, and just in your mind ask that what are the possible whys which you think should answer or should be there in the write up. And you will end up seeing that almost 80 to 90% of the whys are being answered, because the moment you are asking the first why, there's a possible second question, there's a second question, and the second question has an answer, and then there is a third question, and so on and so forth. And that's how you kind of get, kind of deeper into it, right? So what we understood from now is that we know that mind operates in a certain way. We know that uh, there's a way how I can understand the reaction or how someone else's mind will react, and the way to do it is that we need to give a stimuli, right? Now of course the question will be that how do you give a stimuli, and we did one short example saying that you can give us stimuli by just giving a headline, right? And that approach of giving a headline is something called as inductive thinking. Okay. And what does inductive thinking mean, right? Inductive thinking means that when you are having a conversation, start with something which is your governing thought, right? And then once you're starting your conversation with a governing thought, you will be possibly able to navigate through all the Q&As which possibly the other person is going to hear, and that's how you are able to get a better clarity in thought, right? So you start with a primary thought, right? And which is nothing but your main statement, right? And then each of the main statement will have a follow-up questions and answer, and then you will end up in arriving at a conclusion, right? So first start with a key message, then you will have a question answer, and then you will eventually see there is a top-down fictitious logical kind of a pyramid which will happen, and it will enable the reader or the listener to have a grasp on the subject, right? And hence, as leaders or entrepreneurs, the more and more you are getting deeper into your business, first start with a governing thought. Say you're talking to investors, start with what you really want to achieve out of your business. Don't start to give the underlying reasons for that. First start with a governing thought. I want to build India's best XYZ, right? And that's that the moment you say India's XYZ, the possible question is that why do you think it will be India's best? Then you have your answer ready. It will be India's best because till now there are people who have tried this, but no one has tried to do this which I am building. Automatic question which the investors will have is that why the others have not been able to do it. Then your answer should be ready. The others were not able to do it because of they didn't have the tech, or they didn't have the knowledge, or they didn't have done the research, why this is important. Then the question is that why the others were not able to do, and then you can have your hypothesis built, and you will see the quality of the conversation, or the quality which you'll derive out of these type of inductive thinking will enable you to get your clarity of thought, right? And that's what will be a make or break for many of the kind of decisions which you're seeking. Now we'll do an example. Just read this. I would request all of you to read this. Okay, now tell me, what is the governing thought? Can anyone tell me? What is the governing thought?
Two
Sir,
thoughts.
I was not able to read completely.
Sorry?
Back to that page.
No, Sanjoli, I'm
Go
not able
back
to hear.
to,
Can you repeat?
go back to that page, sir.
Right. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Why can Mary only speak German?
Okay, okay. Then anything else?
Why does she hate all the cities in Germany?
Okay. Any other thoughts? You're almost there, but I think there's still a bigger governing thought.
Why she is not left with any choices?
Okay.
Why does she
Which
want to
is
continue in a large city?
okay. You are there. Okay, I'm just giving you a hint. Can you tell me the city names which are there in this short write-up?
Vienna,
Vienna,
Zurich,
Zurich, and some
and
other cities, right?
yeah.
Now, can you tell me which is the city possibly where Mary wants to stay?
Sir, I was thinking that
Vienna, I guess.
Okay, Sanjali, is it you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said Vienna. Yeah, I think someone else wanted. Yeah,
sir, I think Vienna is in not in Germany, I think.
yeah, it's not in Germany, it's in Austria, but it is around the European Union, right? Because she's living because these cities are close by. So the governing thought, right, is that you know Mary wants to stay in Vienna, right? That is the governing thought, right? And there are some reasons which support that. So if you have to, use a inductive thinking, right? Possibly the way to start is that Mary should stay in Vienna, right? That is the governing thought. And what are the reasons? Because Mary has a good job in Vienna, she has a good life, she has many friends, right? This is the way how you can build up this logical thinking, but start with a governing thought that okay, that I want to stay in this city, right? Because if you're doing it in this way, right, this is how you are building your inductive thinking, right? Because just imagine that if you are doing not stating your governing thought, then you will not be able to engage into that kind of conversation, because you are giving this governing thought to inject a stimuli. The moment you say Mary wants to stay in Vienna, the possible thing is why. Then you say because she has a good job. Then why she has a good job? Then you can say because she's already working. Then you will say there could be some other why. She has a good job. She has good life. She can only speak, uh, only German, and because she can only speak German, and Vienna, as a city, also speaks in German, and she hates the other city. That's why she wants to stay in Vienna. But you start with the governing thought that she, Mary wants to live in Vienna. This is little different than another way of giving a stimuli, right? The same thing, if you do, there is a way what is called as deductive uh, approach, right? This is deductive thinking. What it means that you first keep on giving examples that Mary wants to continue living in a large city, because imagine when we were doing the previous example, many of you started with that she wants to uh, say in a large city, she can speak only German and so on, and then you arrived at this that because of all of these she wants to stay in Vienna. Is this approach wrong? The answer is no, this is not wrong. This is just another way of communicating, and this is called as deductive thinking, where you start bottoms up. Now let me give you a practical example, right? If you are in a courtroom setup, right, and say there is a judge and you are an advocate, and say there is a murder case which is going on, possibly you will see that the advocate or the lawyer will start say that I found this the dead body of the person who's got murdered. There were blood stains on uh, the maybe the blanket, right? And then it can say that the blood stain matched with the person who had murdered, and there was a murder weapon, and there on the weapon I saw fingerprints that matched with X, and then X is a murderer, right? That's a way how you can induce a deductive thinking, because that's the way how it gets used in the code. You can't just say that X is the murderer, right? Because you have to build that story, and then only it can happen, right? Whereas in a more like a business setup, when you are in a meeting with your founders or your CEOs, and where each one of you are seemingly looked at as owners, right? Where people really want you to give a decision, because finally you are expected to take certain calls. One of the way is, as I was mentioning, is inductive thinking, right? And how it helps is that the moment you are starting with inductive thinking, this is the way how people understand, hey, this guy has a very clear clarity of thought. And why you are able to build a clarity of thought, because once you are using inductive thinking, you're actually using a stimuli, and that stimuli is probing the listener to have certain questions framed, and you exactly know what questions will be is there in the other person's mind, and you just need to keep on giving answers of those, and just see the quality of engagement which will happen, right? And this clarity of thought is very critical in today's environment, because there are many people like us who are equally able to do a similar thing which we all want to do, but the person or the individual who has a clarity of thought will be the one who will possibly able to shine better, because investors or even managers or even the senior leaders will think that individual, hey, this guy has a or a girl has a good clarity of thought, and okay, looks that she is very clear what he wants to do or what she wants to do, right? So basically, in a deductive thinking, as I said, you deduce the thoughts, you arrive at one more thought, you have some argument, there's a logical progression, and then you say the implication. Whereas in inductive thinking, you start with the implication, you start with the governing thought, and then you keep on giving the reasons, and both are right. But it depends on which setting you're using. I am only trying to say that if you need to build a clarity of thought, try to use inductive thinking, right? Okay. So what we have covered so far is that we need to have. Is there a question? Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
Santosh.
yeah. Sorry, I'm just getting some clarity of thought on this clarity of thought. All right. So your
Okay.
conclusive statement is that the inductive approach is much better than the deductive. Did I get it correct or wrong?
You get it. You got it correct. I'm just saying inductive is better than deductive in a certain setting. And the
Acha.
setting, what I'm saying, in a business environment where you are looked as owners or decision makers. So when you're looked at a decision maker, don't give the story first. Give what you want to do or what is the decision what you want to take, and then give the reasons for the decision,
Got
rather
it.
than saying, okay, there are multiple things and blah blah blah, and then because of which I want to do. Because imagine in today's world, if you recall some of the some of the assumptions is that the everyone, you have to prioritize the other person's time, right? Everyone has a very limited time, short span, kind of attention span, and in that setting, the way it can help this is to adopt this inductive thinking. Yeah.
Got it. So if that is true, can I kindly go back to that piece of information?
Which one?
So if you the previous slide, right, where you had that write up. Now, if you look at the write up, right,
Huh.
uh, the deductive, is sort of you have all the evidence there. Can you go to the inductive piece, please?
Yeah,
The
this is the
previous one.
inductive piece.
So,
This is
so if you
inductive.
look, yeah, if you look at the independent group of answers, correct?
Hmm.
Either that is missing over there or that seems to be some assumptions. So, what I wanted to understand is, does inductive thinking, you know, we need to go with some assumptions, or the next one, deductive, is, it's evidence based, right? You have all the evidence to have the conclusion that you need why she wants to stay back in Vienna, whereas the inductive talks about some assumptions that are missing in the data. So I just want to thought I'll clarify on that because
No,
I'm
no,
not able to
thanks.
get that.
No, absolutely. Thanks. And again, as I said, this must be new to many of us. It was new to me maybe 6 years back, but now because I'm talking around this for a while, I can understand the predicament which you might have. So again, I'll take maybe 3-4 minutes on this because this is important. And thanks for bringing this up, Santosh. So what I'm only trying to say is that the inductive thing, right? In this example, and say Mary is trying to communicate this with her mother, right? And she wants to say that I don't want to go somewhere else. I want to stay in Vienna, right? Rather than saying that, okay, I can't speak any other language. I have good friends. I have already a job, blah, blah, blah. And hence I want to stay here. I'm just trying to say in this setting, she can always say that I want to stay in Vienna. And that is the stimuli which she is giving to her mother. And then automatically her mother will possibly have some question that why do you want to stay in Vienna? The answer could be that I already have a job. Then the mother's mind can always have the so what, right? So what, you have a job, you might also get a job somewhere else. Then the answer could be that I only know only one language, that is German, and that is possibly used only in Vienna. Other cities speak some other language, right? The other thing could be that why can't you learn that other language? The other thing is that no, I don't like the other cities, and that's where end of the story. Because if I don't like the city, how can I even stay in that city, right? So the 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 I mean, what I want to all of you to at least understand is that our mind operates in a certain way, right? And just close your eyes and just think for a few seconds that the moment you hear some statement, there are certain order of questions which comes to your mind, right? And possibly those could be the whys, hows, and whats, right? And imagine if you are able to put governing thought when you're conversing with someone, you would be possibly able to understand what possibly 90% of accuracy what those whys and what could be, and then try to keep your narrative ready that if these are the possible questions which will come, let me be ready with those answers, so that people can understand that you have a very clear way of operating. You know exactly what you want to do. I'll take a pause. Yeah, over to you, Santosh. Did I mean, was I mean, I hope I was able to kind of clarify you this.
Uh, well, I still didn't get it, but I don't want to take others, time at ransom. But
Okay,
we can connect later. Yeah.
sure. Okay.
Just one more question or maybe a point.
Yeah.
So, in some situations, like the situation of law that you mentioned, deductive reasoning stands prime. However, in the same situation, perhaps inductive reasoning could be used for things like deciding the motive of the killer. So, maybe in the same situation, both this and that can be applied depending on what the outcome that you want. Or would you?
Yes, right. No, no, you're right, and hence I said it's a setting, right? It is totally about how you want to run the narrative, right? As I said, in a courtroom setting, it is always important to give the background and then try to say what is the implication, right? In what we have seen, and this is based on my work experience and all, is that in many situations I have seen that the moment you start with a governing thought, your quality of conversations always got better because people realize that, hey, I think this guy has a very good way of thinking, that he is very clear that what possible questions would come if someone wants to take a decision, right? And then the next steps are very clear, right? So what I'm only trying to say is that in this case is that both inductive and deductive are ways of communication or ways of thinking. um, because our mind operates in a certain way, the way to understand what type of questions will come is only possible if you use inductive thinking, right? And hence you will see, read any article in the website, in any website or any good kind of newspaper, you will see that the reason why you have a headline is because they want to deduce, or they want to induce, not deduce, they want to induce a thought in the mind of the reader, because they know if they're able to induce, there will be some possible questions which will always be there in the mind, and then the article write up tries to answer those questions, right? And then you build a connectedness with the reader. Is that clear? uh, it was Mohammed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll move on. I have got only couple of slides. Let me share the screen. Just let me know if you're able to see the screen. Okay. Yeah. Now, moving on to from here, right? So what we have covered is that we believe that I thought by now you firmly believe there should be a clarity of thinking. So if you need to drive clarity of thinking, start with the governing thought. If you start with a governing thought, you actually give a stimuli to the mind of the others so that you can engage into a Q&A kind of thing, and then you just need to keep on answering the whys, right? But the point is that why it is so difficult, why it is so difficult to uh, have this done, right? Because you're actually subjecting ourselves or our mind to change, right? And my last slide to this presentation is that what is there a framework which you can employ in your uh, you know organization setting, which can help you to lead that change? So there's a Harvard Business Review case which is written by John Cotter, and it says that leading change, why transformation efforts fail. And I would indulge most all of you to read this. It says that in for a successful change management, there are 8 steps which has to be done, right? One is that there's first step, which is, and it has to be in the same order, and at least the first step should be there. There should be, you have to establish a sense of urgency, right? It means that, okay, I want this new product to be launched, right? And that is the urgency, because if I am not getting this minimum viable product, then no customer will buy. Then you should have you should form a powerful guiding coalition, and that essentially means that you need to get a buy-in from all the key stakeholders, who equally feels the sense of urgency. Say for instance, There's a business team who wants to launch it, but they're not aligning your maybe the finance team or the supply chain team. Then automatically that urgency will fail because each one of us are not aligned to that thought. Then once you have done that, you need to create a vision, which means that what you want to change, and then a strategy of how you want to achieve it. Because without that, nothing will work. The fourth important thing is that you have to communicate this vision and strategy, and that communication has to happen not only at our top leaders but bottoms, totally up to the last level of your employee hierarchy pyramid, so that everyone is believing on your vision and strategy. The next step, which is the fifth step, is that if you want to get this vision and strategy work, you have to empower others so that you are not the only one who has the authority to take the decisions. You have to empower others. Once you have done it, you need to establish some short wins, meaning by doing or by believing in this, there should be some key wins which has already happened, or which you should be able to demonstrate. Okay, because we have got this done, there are some signs which are being shown, which are testimony to that you have already are able to kind of you are able to kind of get closer to the vision where you want, right? You have to enable processes so that the efforts can be sustained, and you need to institutionalize this new culture across the org, right? While I don't want to get into this particular case, but generally when I teach a little bit of a change management, we have a case on Volkswagen, Brazil, where how this entire change management occurred in that in that company in Brazil, where they were actually losing out a market share, and that also leads up to something called as a balance scorecard, which maybe for some other day. But I think this is where I want to leave the forum at, and this was the last slide as I mentioned. But just to summarize what we have done today is that we have understood what does measuring and monitoring mean. We have understood that we should not only measure inputs, we should not only measure output, we should measure inputs as well. Why do we need to measure inputs? Is because of the fact that inputs are something which are controllable, and outputs are something which is a testimony to how well you have managed the inputs. And if you have done this so well, because this is a session where I'm sure that there are many managers or even upcoming entrepreneurs, I believe that what differentiates from the good from the best is possibly where you have a clarity of thought. And we have learned how you can possibly drive clarity of thought. We learned about the Gestalt law, which essentially says that our mind is able to has an innate disposition of able to assemble things when things are grouped in a certain way. And it is grouped in a certain way, you need to give a stimuli to the mind, because then it helps the other person to also understand things in a certain way, the way you want. And that approach is what is called as inductive thinking, where you start with the governing thought and then start to give the reasons, and not the other way around, where you start to give the reasons and then you want to land up at, right? Say in many cases I have seen in the past that I want something to say to my manager. I say that, okay, I my the office is possibly 30 kilometers from my home. There's a lot of traffic. I don't get my cab. Most of my cabs are getting cancelled. Hence, I want to work from home, right? And then by the time I'm giving these reasons, my manager possibly lose that. Okay, no, no, I mean, please come to the point, right? In many cases, you have seen in conversation people saying, please come to the point. The reason why they are saying come to the point is because you have not given a stimuli. And imagine that you start this, or I started my conversation with the manager saying, I want to work from home for this week, because I know that every day it is taking some 2 hours for me to reach office. There's the during the office time there is huge traffic, because maybe there is a flyover which is getting constructed, for which there is a traffic kind of diversion, and because of which it is eating away a lot of time. Then the conversation will get better, and hence if you're able to relate, you'll always see that when someone is asking you that please come to the point, it means that they are wanting you to give a stimuli, so that the Q&A or the flow in which the conversation should happen gets better, right? So with that, thank you for your attention. I hope it was some way useful or meaningful to you. These are my coordinates, and I now open the forum for Q&A. Yeah.
I think before we go there, I think that last slide was powerful. It's a very structured, way to understand, the success of transformation. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello guys, if anyone has questions, they can post it or ask sir directly.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Manoj this side, sir. Uh,
Yes.
Actually, sir, I have a very little curiosity since you are in the financial background, sir, and very financial strong in PhD in sir finance, sir. I just want to know, sir, if we had a very good idea, sir, if we want to have a good startup, sir, but basically, sir, the ways you suggest that to raise the funding, sir, uh,
Uh-huh.
of a small size, sir, basically, sir. Any sir book you sir recommend that is very systematically and very elaborate and in simple language make you understand that how to get the funding for a new startup, sir, basically.
So see, I don't say. Of course, there are multiple books, right? I am not able to recollect one, but what I'm again trying to say is that to get a startup, what the investors want is a clarity of thought, right? So start thinking that, ask these questions to you, right? Um, what is the outcome which you want to derive out of the startup, not output, outcome. Meaning, when I say outcome, I'm saying I mentioned, right, I want to India's best or world's best. That is the first thing, right? And in order to arrive at that outcome, what are the different things which you are trying to do to to drive it? You need to answer, and hence one of the thing which I also take as a proper session is one of the mechanism or one of the process to get a clarity of thought is writing. I think we possibly write very less in these days, and unless you write, it will never come. So the question which you need to answer is that, why now? Meaning, why do you think this startup is important in the overall scheme of things now, right? And the second question is that, what is the defensive strategy, or what is the moat, right, which you think your startup has? Meaning, why can't others copy the idea, right? Because I mean, I have been also fortunate to be a in one of the startup as a CEO. While I have failed, it was in EV logistics, and my friend had started it way back in 2018 when EV logistics was not there. And after 5 years, when I joined and I was trying to pitch to multiple VCs, right, their question was that, what is that you think you have, which others can't copy? And possibly we never had an answer to that, because if someone has access to capital, they can always get the three-wheeler EVs from the OEMs, and they just need to hire a right logistics guy who can run it. So we didn't have a moat, and we didn't end up having the capability to raise capital, right? So these two questions, that why now and why others can't copy, are these two questions we should be clear. But yeah, I mean, I'll also check if there's a proper book or not, but I think there are for sure, but it's not coming to my mind right now.
Thank you very much, sir, for your insight, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Any other questions?
Sir, just going back to the question, if it's okay completely, of the business where the costs are majorly fixed and there is almost no variable cost. Now, the question is, for example, again, if I could just flesh this out a little bit more. Let's say the fixed cost for running a school, and there is
Mhm,
primarily only fixed cost because I can't make the salaries variable based on the number of students, or I can't make the rent variable based on the number of students. So the majority of the costs would be fixed. Now, let's
mhm,
say the entire cost of running the school is 50,000. We have, let's say, for example, 1,000 rupees fees, and we have capacity for 100 students. That basically means if we have 50 students, we reach break even. If more than 50 students, we will be more profitable. Now, the
mhm,
question what I was asking was, is there any way where we can stabilize the net profit per unit, as in for the student? Because for the first student, the entire fixed cost, the overhead of fixed cost, will be allocated to the first person itself. So the net margin will be completely negative. The second student, the overhead will be split up between two. So it'll become 25,000, 25,000, and so on and so forth. So the fixed cost will keep shifting. By fixed cost, I mean the amount of fixed cost allocated per unit will keep shifting.
mhm,
And because of that, the profit per unit will keep shifting. So I just wanted to know if there is any method or is there any way
Yeah, yeah,
to stabilize that.
yeah. Again, like it's not a the answer to the question is not a 1 minute answer. So the short answer still is that there are methods. One is called activity based costing, right, which tries to transform a many fixed costs into a way how it can be made variable, right? And the second thing is your pricing strategy. Essentially, when you are pricing anything, the way you should price is that you should still have something which is variable. You can't run a business which where everything is fixed, right? And so you need to define a strategy that what is the price for which you are at least able to recover your variable cost, and then what is the balance which can recoup your fixed cost. I'll give an example on the first point when I said that how you can transform your fixed cost into a variable. Say for instance, just imagine there is a institution like yours, right? And there is a electricity which is being paid, right? Now imagine that someone in that institute wants to understand that what is the margin which I'm getting by running a particular course, which means that all the costs have to be allocated to that particular program, right? Just to understand. So it is very easy to allocate costs when I know that okay, there are X number of profs who are taking sessions, and each one has a salary, and based on the number of sessions taken, you can allocate, right? But how do you transform that electricity cost which is there into a variable cost, right? The answer to this is that activity based costing, in essence, you need to understand that what is driving electricity cost to be incurred. Possibly the answer to it is that number of units of electricity which is consumed in that particular class, and which essentially is linked to the number of sessions which are being held in that class. So one of the ways to do it is that you can also implement one meter, electricity meter in that class, so that I am exactly able to understand how many units of electricity are getting kind of getting consumed whenever a session is happening in that class. And I am assuming that, say, you have a defined classroom in which all your classes are happening, right? So while it might sound lame, but I can guarantee you that this is how in most organizations, when they have to allocate cost, they are implementing machinery to identify how cost can be allocated, right? And hence you can't run a business if you think everything is fixed. You need to find out a way how you can transform your fixed cost into a variable cost. You will of course have some fixed cost, but you just can't keep everything variable.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
Yeah, Mano, this side, sir. Actually, sir,
yeah,
I just written an email to you, sir. Whenever you feel some time and to can search for the best route for the raising the funding, just let me know
sure,
the by the mail, sir. I send the mail,
sure,
sir.
sure.
Thank you, sir.
Right, right. I can
Hello.
see. Yeah, yeah, Keshav.
Yeah, yes, sir. Pranam, sir. Sir, I have a little doubt on the market rather than sell.
Hmm.
What is the difference between the real market of product and service versus the new digital product coming? Because what I see as a new guy, that the digital product world is very different in sell than the regular product and services. So if someone from my generation is coming to digital product, what are the things he or she should keep in mind to stay in safe zone? If you
Sure, sure. Yeah, I'll try to answer that, Keshav. But I think I was also looking at your pinned message that sales is romance. Actually, there's a saying in many of the business schools. They say that sales is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is reality. So and it is very deep rooted thought in this, right? You will see in many of the situations where people will say, okay, I have done this much of sales, right? Then you finally end up saying that, okay, you have done the sales, but your profit is only X%, right? And then some finance person will come up and say that, okay, you have done so much, but we have not even able to realize cash, right? So this saying, right, sales is vanity, profit is sanity, because it is little sane. Profit is still saner than sales, and then cash is reality. Say if you're doing a very, if you're running a very good business, but you're still not able to generate cash, it means nothing, right? And hence, this is very relevant for even, as you run as managers or even as entrepreneurs, that investors will always want to see whether you're able to generate operating cash, right? Now, coming to the your main question, which you asked about how to stay how to stay connected to this digital space. I think, see, I mean, at a fundamental level, nothing has changed and maybe it's my philosophy, but I strongly believe that even in today's world, whether you are running a digital business or a physical business, your stakeholders, right, their expectation have not changed. Say if I'm a customer, I would still want the product to be delivered on time. The product should be available at the best price, which should be competitive, and the customers should have multiple choices from where they can buy. From the vendor standpoint, it is also very clear that the vendor will always want the uh, they would want their money on time, and they should be able to know that how much is due, and everything has to be and that if you're not able to answer these fundamental questions, right, then you are not doing the then your business processes are not right. So I think it is all about understanding that the fundamentals have not changed. The only difference is how you are actually delivering the business. You can deliver the business physically or you can deliver the business digitally, but your underlying fundamentals have not broadly changed. So right, it is just that tuning which is needed. So when you are thinking that I'll build a startup or I want to do a digital business, don't discount these fundamentals, because your customers will always be the people who are always be dissatisfied with you, because they will always want more. And that is, even if you go back 1,000 years, I think this would be the same. Your vendors or your suppliers who are supplying your raw material or your some inputs to your entire business, they will always want the money to be paid on time, and they would just know that, okay, if you paid on time, against what instrument you have paid against, or how much is due, there should be a clear way how you can explain those things. So I mean, I'm just talking about few of such examples, but I think fundamentals have not changed. That's the underlying thought. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, I can exactly get you because last night I was just listening to Aswad Damodaran, and
Hmm.
today I am like more clear regarding the basics and yeah, the hype doesn't quite change the fundamental, and the product variety and the time period will be the essential of all.
Right, right.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Anything else?
I, I think maximum people has left right now. We've already crossed time, like by
Okay.
30 minutes.
Oh, I was told that it is 2 hours, hence I planned this way.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
so
actually, yeah. Oh, so
okay,
actually, it
then
was a morning
apologies
session.
for
That's
this.
why
Yeah,
not many
yeah,
have joined.
Yes,
Also on
some
Sunday
people are
morning.
really serious about their startups. So
mm.
Yeah.
Okay, then sorry
Okay.
for keeping you hold for long, but I hope it
It was a
was
really
some way
interactive session, so
useful.
like the best interactive session ever. Like thanks to Santosh and some people who have made it interactive, and your knowledge literally enriched us. Like literally, not saying because it's written in some of the concluding part, but literally it was the best session ever. And in the last session also we talked about how to save planet and earn money. Here also we learned something related to that, and we also got clarity on thoughts. Obviously, it was the best example of counting bubbles. Also, we are a data science student, so maybe it will benefit us, right? So, data science and we data analytics we study as a course in IIT Madras. Also, Jamshedji Tata Society is for innovation and entrepreneurship. It's a cell that we have in IIT Madras BS degree, and we keep organizing these kind of sessions. And so we have a fest coming up on 30 May to 2nd June. So we have that. This session was a part of that, becoming billionaires, which is a workshop series. So basically, this was the second workshop series. The third one will be on campus at IIT Madras, where we'll be learning how to build business models for startups. Sir, any last words about how was the audience, how was the session? Any, then we
No,
can
no,
close
I'm
this.
also immensely happy that I think there were few of you who unmuted and spoken. Thanks. I think Santosh, you have been very kind to, explain, your experience, and also, Keshav and Manoj, and some of you, and Mohammed. So and also Sanjuli. I could just recollect some of the names, and many of you who have also commented on the chat. Thanks a lot for making it interactive. Right. I hope that I know that I have already eaten up 30 minutes of your precious time on a Sunday. But honestly, first, I didn't know it was 1.5 hours, but then I would have curated in that way. But still, I think the discussions were meaningful. I also learned from you. So thanks a lot again. Thanks for making me a part of this. I would be happy to, partner in any of future events, or if you want
Yes, sir, sure, sir,
me to
sure,
be
sir.
physically there in Chennai, I would be
Yes, sir,
happy to do
sure,
that.
sir.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for
Sure,
that.
sir. We'll be inviting you next year,
Uh,
maybe.
Thank you, sir. Kindly make another session. It will be very, very interesting.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We'll be inviting you in the future session. We have almost one session every month in our eSelf society. Every like literally every month we have partners from other like companies. Also, we have some or the other guests coming up, and we have competitions, hackathons, etc. organized. Um, Thank you, everybody. Uh, I hope you like the session, and
Srijal,
we'll share.
just
Yeah.
one last comment, sincere apologies from my side,
No issues. No
for
issues. Go ahead.
taking the time. But I wanted to end this note, Soumik, that we should start monetizing this. I think you got it, what I'm saying.
Okay.
Right.
So we'll be sharing the feedback form, and we'll also share the sir's email ID and sir's link. Then you guys can connect with sir, and maybe you can discuss on more on this. And let's end it then. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Have
guys.
a good day. Bye. Have a good Sunday
Have a
with
good day, sir.
your family and friends. Bye. Bye. Bye.